Okay, ladies and gentlemen, jury, there were 3 questions, 2 of which are the same, basically. Any clarification on the yes-been document that the jury was just given a copy of, who or which party hand wrote the room number? This witness doesn't have knowledge of that, and may be answered later in the case, so we'll reserve the question. The next question is, did the hotel maintain standards of care in relation to guest access to the LCD-style phones that show room numbers and guest names? The court has sustained an objection to that because he's an expert witness, but he didn't disclose that he could testify on that. He may not know it, or it could be asked later by another witness. Okay.
Your Honor, we are bringing Mr. Andrews in to testify, Erin's dad.
You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, jury. Appreciate your time.
While we're waiting for him, I published number 66, 1 and 3 yesterday with Mr. Davenport up on the screen. We're going to want to give those exhibit numbers.
Number 14 and 15.
For the trial. They will be 14 and 15. Thank you. We will give you hard copies.
Explain a good definition of the restate your definition of the 2 exhibits.
Right. It was exhibit 66, page 1 and page 3. It was the memo that shows the date of 2005 and the page that shows the checklist, including secure people. So I refer to it as 66, 1 and 3 during the testimony. It will have court exhibits for trial of, did you say 14 and 15, Your Honor?
15.
Okay, so we'll get those to you.
Tell the jury your name, please.
My name is Stephen Andrews.
Okay, you might want to tilt that microphone up a little bit so you don't have to lean forward.
Come in a little bit. How's that? Okay?
Are you Erin Andrews' father?
I am.
What do you do, Mr. Andrews?
I'm a reporter with a television station in Tampa, Florida.
And where was Erin born?
Erin was born in Auburn, Maine, small little town. We lived in Auburn, Maine. She was born in Lewiston at the hospital, Central Maine Medical Center.
Okay. And where did she grow up as a little girl?
Well, she spent her first few years in Maine. Then we moved to San Antonio for about 18 months. And at about the age of 5, we moved to Tampa. And she spent pretty much all of her formative years in Brandon and Tampa, Florida.
Now, what did your wife do?
My wife is retired currently, but she was an art teacher at Brooker Elementary School in Brandon.
Now, how long did she do that?
Well, I think she taught there for about 25 years. She had previously taught 7 years in the state of Maine, but when she started having babies, we decided, okay, let's keep you home for a little bit. And then when Erin's youngest sister, Kendra, went to school, Paula went back to school and started teaching as well.
Paul is your wife?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you all have 2 girls?
2 girls, Erin and her sister, Kendra.
Her sister's younger than her, right?
3.5 years younger, yes, sir.
show you a photo. Don't see these. Tell us, a little glare there, but tell us who these people are.
Sure, the guy with the full head of hair is me. Behind me is my wife Paula, Erin's mom. Next to me in the red shirt is Erin. Next to Erin is her sister Kendra. Next to Ken is my wife's sister Donna, and in Donna's lap is Erin's cousin Maya.
What do we have here?
This was Erin when she was, I think, in middle school. She was, I believe, in some kind of a science project with her good friend Kelly. And I think she was holding a snake.
And what's that?
Erin was involved in some kind of a fundraising event, I think, or maybe a school event at a bowling alley, and she was probably not really happy with the way the ball went in the gutter on that one.
That's her catching a fish?
Trip to North Carolina, a little family vacation where we had gone to a fish farm, do a little catfishing, and I think that's the first fish Erin ever caught.
Oh, good. Well, here's one.
Yeah, I believe that's a school picture. I'm not really exactly sure what grade that is, probably, fifth, sixth grade maybe. She was tall and kind of thin.
Who are these people here?
Well, on the left is Kendra, and on the right is Erin. They both danced at the Brandon School of Dance Arts for many years. There was a passion of theirs, and they had great friends there. And this was a pre-recital type of photo that they were posing for. And I believe that was a high school picture of Erin at an event with the Brandon School of Dance Arts. She danced on a competitive dance team. And at the end of the year, I think they went on some kind of a little field trip. I'm not sure if this was it or not, but that's kind of where I recognize that hat from.
This last picture?
This last picture, high school, I believe. We were on a friend's boat, just kind of driving around Tampa Bay.
I'd like to mark all these that we just went through as a collective exhibit.
This is number 16.
Now, when she was a little girl, real little, did you take time off from work during the week or have a different schedule from your wife?
Yeah, I worked, when Erin was born, I worked in radio. I worked 6 days a week. I had to work Saturdays and Sundays because I had a part-time job in television as well. And I did get, I got Tuesdays and Wednesdays off. And my wife worked Monday through Friday. And we had paid to put Erin in daycare while we were both working. And I just kept her home with me on my days off, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we did everything together. We went shopping, baked cornbread. That was one of the things we used to love to do. So yeah, I kept her home with me, and she was like my little buddy.
Are y'all real close?
Yeah, she's, we're all close, and we're all each other's best friends.
And how often do you talk to her?
I talk to her almost every day. day, sometimes more than that. We text each other constantly, so we're in touch quite a bit, almost every day, if not multiple times a day.
And that's the way y'all have been for the whole time.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, ever since the invention of cell phones and we could start affording them, yeah, we started texting each other once we knew how to do that. But yeah, we're very, very close. We pretty much tell each other everything and, love each other.
Well, we all know about her television appearances and what she does in sports. Tell the jury how she became interested in that.
I'm a big sports fan. Having grown up in New England, love the Red Sox, the Celtics, teams with a lot of tradition and history. And Erin and I would sit and watch basketball games or baseball games or football games. And when she would sit with me, it was our time together, and I would tell her stories about, how Larry Bird really didn't like Magic Johnson, and they weren't getting along, and then they were hired to make a commercial, and Magic Johnson showed up at Larry Bird's house. Larry's mother served sweet potato pie to Magic Johnson. They became great friends. These are the stories I would tell her. These are the stories that she loved to hear, because I love them. I just thought interesting stories about the people themselves was what made sports interesting to me, not just the scores. So that's I think how she became interested in it.
Okay. And did she let you know sometime, what did she call you, Daddy or Dad, or what did she call you?
She mostly Daddy.
Dad?
Yeah.
Or did she say to you sometime, Dad, I want to be a sports announcer or something like that?
Yeah, she did. We were actually watching a Celtics-Sixers game, and we were sitting on the couch just watching the game, and I believe Ann Storm was interviewing Charles Barkley, and she just looked at me and she said, Dad, that's what I want to do. And I said, Erin, that's what we all want to do, but very few of us get the opportunity. So, yeah, it was an early age, and she told me that's what I want to do.
Okay, so she graduated from high school.
Yes.
And then where did she go to college?
She went to the University of Florida in Gainesville.
And after that, what did she do professionally?
Well, she graduated with a degree in telecommunications, and she had, when she was in college, she applied for an internship at the television station at where I worked, and I had told the news director and given him a heads up. My daughter had applied for an internship. Please don't treat her like, any differently than you would anybody else. If you want her here, take her. If you don't, I get it. So he did. He allowed, they put Erin in the internship program at WFLA, and she learned, she followed these people who were in the sports department, the sports reporters, the producers, followed them, carried, the tripods and the lights to go to the Buccaneers practices, to go to the Lightning practices, to go to the Devil Rays practices. And she got to know how to act, she got to know who to talk to, who the press deals with, how they deal with them. And after she graduated, she came back home and she went back to the station. And she wasn't in a program, but she went back and carried the tripods, carried the lights, so she could expose herself and network with the various teams and reporters that were covering the Tampa Bay sports scene. She was hired by the Fox Florida Regional Sports Network. They had a bureau in Tampa St. Pete at the time, and they hired her to do, cover games every once in a while. She would go over to Orlando to cover a Celtics Magic basketball game, where she went to cover the FSU Florida game. Just depends what they needed. It was sporadic work, but that's how she got her start. And then through the networking process, she met up with Sage Steele, who is now with ESPN, and at the time she was with the Fox Florida Sports Network. And Sage kind of mentored Erin, and Erin learned about an opening with the Tampa Bay Lightning, sideline reporting, and she applied for the job, and she got the job. I was surprised and delighted that she got this job. She knew nothing about hockey at the time, so that she got the job.
Okay, and then after that, kind of summarize and take us forward with what her career was like.
Her career, just from the time she was hired with the Lightning, her career just took off. She knew nothing about hockey when she first started, and I think the night before she read Hockey for Dummies. She wanted to do a good job. She wanted to understand the sport. She got the job. She did a good job. She became very well educated in the game. She knew the players. She knew their stories. And she then went to Atlanta. The Lightning were playing the Atlanta Thrashers. And I believe what happened was the TBS had seen her and they were interested in finding out whether she was just a pretty blonde or if she knew what she was talking about. So they sent a producer over to sit down and ask her a bunch of dumb questions. And they were sitting at a table having lunch or something, and he came over and he sat down, asked a bunch of dumb questions, and Erin just corrected him. She said, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And by that time, she was an encyclopedia about hockey. She knew everything about hockey. She had great contacts with the team and other teams. They hired her. She went national at that point, covering Atlanta Braves post-game shows, pre-game shows. She did college football coverage on TBS. She did some hockey coverage. So she was there for about a couple of years, but she went from Tampa Bay, a local hockey team, to the national scene with the Atlanta Braves and TBS, and it was like just right up there. And her time at TBS, I think she was there 2 years. Her contract expired. She was wondering what she was going to do next. The hockey playoffs were underway, and she approached ESPN, and they had a crew in town covering the Thrashers game. So she approached them about, how can I help? Is there a way I can get involved? They gave her a 6-week tryout, and she covered the West Coast playoffs and covered them amazing. She did well. She did really well. I mean, she would talk about players, their wives, their families, the personal stories, where she'd climb up into the very, very top row of the Calgary Stadium, the nosebleed section, and do live shots from there. She just did everything, and they were very, very impressed with how she did it. And so they asked her to do the championship series, and it happened to involve the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Calgary Flames. And sometimes it's right place, right time. Erin still had all her contacts on the Lightning, so it was the right place, right time. She broke story after story after story. And when the playoffs ended, they turned around and said, "We want you. We want to give you a 3-year deal." Which was just, and that was all within a span of 3 years.
Okay, and after that, what happened?
Well, they immediately threw her into everything they had. They threw her into the biggest stuff they had. They threw her into Major League Baseball. She covered, the very first game she covered was when the Red Sox got their World Series rings at Fenway Park. And I went to that game. I was very excited. And she was covering that game, and she managed to talk to David Ortiz before the game, and she had never met this man before, but he somehow agreed to hand her his World Series diamond ring and let her use that for a hit. I think it was her first hit at Fenway Park. So ESPN threw her into Major League Baseball, which she covered, and she did a great job. They threw her into college football, which she did a great job with college football. They threw her into college basketball. They still had some NHL coverage at that time, so she did that as well. She worked around the calendar, and I think she worked several years without ever taking a vacation. She got a day off here and there, but it was like from one city to the next, one city to the next, just covering.
She loves her work.
She loves her work. She throws herself into her work. She's very, very passionate about what she does. She's always wanted to do it. Somebody gave her an opportunity, and she just ran with the ball.
Let's go up then. That probably gets us close to the year 2009. Kind of close there with her background history.
I'm sorry?
Are we?
Yeah.
She was working at ESPN.
Right.
And doing those things you described. And now we're moving to 2009.
We, by the time 2009 rolled around, Erin was just the biggest thing, if you will, to hit sideline reporting. About the time she was doing all these games in every sport, the internet was just beginning to catch fire. And there were all kinds of stories about her being the girl next door. Hey, if you'd really like to go watch a game, you want to go with Erin Andrews. Maybe we can go to a bar, have a beer with her. This is the kind of person that you wanted to have watch a game with, because she just was like the girl next door who knew baseball, knew football, knew hockey, knew basketball, and anything she did was just, it got tremendous attention. Her name, she was nicknamed Erin Page Views, which meant that any time anybody wrote something about her on the internet, if they tagged her name, or if they even wrote something that wasn't about her and put her name in there, they would get page views, because people just were interested in reading about what she was doing, where she was going. She had an enormous following, and if I can tell you one story, I was home watching a game. She was doing a basketball game, college basketball game in Wisconsin, and Brent Musburger was doing the play-by-play, and I think Steve Lavin was doing the analyst stuff, and Erin was down in the crowd where she always is, and Musburger throws it down to Erin to do her hit. And as she starts doing her hit, the crowd starts chanting her name. Erin Andrews, Erin Andrews. And I stood up and I said to my wife, I have never seen that before. I'm a big sports fan. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. I was really just shocked. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I hope she can get through this, because that's got to be very distracting. And she pulled it off like a pro. Threw it back, never mentioned it, threw it back, and Musburger starts going on with the play-by-play, and then Steve Lavin goes, hold on a minute, did you hear that? Did you hear what I just heard? The crowd was chanting Erin Andrews' name, and he did the whole thing, Erin Andrews, Erin, and it just validated, what I had just heard, that she had become somebody. She was there, she had arrived, and Lavin had to point that out, and Musburger was like, yeah, but she's not big enough, or she's not too big that she can't carry her own luggage, So it was just kind of, wow, this is amazing. It was just incredible that this had happened.
You weren't proud, were you?
Oh no, I wasn't proud. No, I was very, very proud. I couldn't believe it, really. She would call me with stories about the different players on different teams, stuff that nobody else knew. And I'd sit there and I'd go, wow, this is amazing stuff. And some of it she could use, some of it she couldn't. She understood how it worked, in order to earn respect, in order to be trusted. There was stuff you couldn't let out. So Erin was very good. She was very smart about stuff like that. Rick Sutcliffe took her under his wing during the initial season, with baseball. He was terrific, Hall of Fame pitcher. He would bring her in, sit her down with different ball players in locker rooms, and they would look at her and he'd say, no, she's okay. She's with me, she's okay. And that's how it started. And so, yeah, I was really proud because hey, listen, I got into broadcasting because I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, okay? And that just didn't work out that way. But, you know, she's done, like, wow, what I would have loved to have done.
All right, so was she happy in the summer of 2009?
She was very happy. She was at the top of the world, loved her job, loved being around fans, loved being in the crowd. She took me to a Florida-Georgia football game up at the Gator Bowl one year. And as we were walking from one sideline to the other to get to the ESPN crew that was covering the game, she just wanted to go say hello to her colleagues. As we were walking along, the end zone full of fans just went absolutely crazy. They just went nuts, screaming her name. And we stopped, and she took pictures and photos and signed autographs. It took us 25 minutes to get across the field. Anybody who, you know, wanted a picture, she gave a picture to her fans. So, yeah, she loved her job. She loved the environment. She just thrived in that kind of a venue.
And personally, was she happy?
Oh, yeah, she was very happy. She was very, very excited about what could come next in her life.
Now let's switch to a phone call you got. Tell the jury about the phone call you got from your daughter.
Sorry. It was a Thursday night, July 2009. Erin had been out in LA covering the ESPYs. She had spoken to a new agent. She had spoken with people at Dancing with the Stars. They wanted her to come on the show. And I picked up the phone. She had told me about that earlier in the day, and I thought, wow, this is wonderful. You know, things are just going so well in her life. And picked up the phone, and she's screaming on the other end of the phone, just hysterically, out of control, screaming. And I couldn't understand her. I didn't know what she was talking about. And I'm trying to calm her down, trying to understand what happened. And she kept screaming, I'm on the internet, I'm on the internet, I'm naked. Everything I work for is done. I'm naked, you got to get it down, we got to get it down. And she's screaming, just screaming. And crying hysterically. And I tried to calm her down. At that point, I kind of went into a reporter mode of my own and just started asking her questions. Who, what, where, when? Tell me the facts. Tell me what you know. Let's try to work this through. Let's try to understand this. There was no understanding. It was just, she was telling me, hysterically crying, screaming out of her mind, that images of her, video of her, were up on the internet of her changing, her naked in hotel rooms, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Just couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Then what happened? What did y'all try to do about before we come to that?
Well, I had told her, I think what we need to do here is we need to get this stuff down. Where did it come from? We had no idea where it came from. So I suggested to her, call ESPN. They have to know about this because every broadcaster has a clause in their contract that says if you do anything, it's a morals clause, if you do anything that brings embarrassment to us, we'll fire you. And that's why she was screaming hysterically about, that's one of the reasons she was screaming hysterically, because there's a clause in the contract that they can just fire you if they think you're going to bring embarrassment to them. So I told her, call them. They're a big entity. They've got lawyers. They might be able to help you with this. Let's start there. So she called, and she called me back, and she said that they told her to hire a lawyer, and I'm not So Erin was out meeting with an agent, so I said, why don't you call Babette, who was the agent, Babette Perry. I said, call her. She's interested in representing you. You're interested in having her represent you. Let's see how good she is. Let's see if she really wants to represent you. So we got a hold of Babette, and she immediately sprang into action, and she brought in an attorney. Our first efforts were to get this down. But the most compelling thing to me was what's happening to my daughter. I didn't know if she was safe. I didn't know who was doing this. I didn't know if somebody was going to hurt her even more. After I saw what was happening, my thought was there's a stalker out there and that he's going to kill her. I was terrified for her safety. So we started calling ESPN, asking for security, and trying to get the video down. ESPN did send a letter to the website, I think it was Daily Motion. They sent a letter. I think they were trying to help, but it made it worse. They sent a letter to Daily Motion saying, you're showing nude video of one of our on-air personalities. We demand that you take it down. Well, that pretty much told the world who she was. And we, at that point, were again begging for them to take it down. I believe Daily Motion or Deadspin then put that letter up and said, this is confirmation. And it just grew. It just grew. It was horrible. It was just so horrible. We started getting phone calls from the Today Show, from Meredith Vieira, from Good Morning America. I mean, all these shows, CBS News, ABC, NBC, Fox, they were all calling our house, wanting us, we want to talk to you, and we weren't picking up the phone because we were horrified, and we knew we didn't want to talk to anybody about this because we had no idea how big or what this all entailed. So we didn't respond to any of that stuff. We just tried to get Erin home and protect her because we didn't know what we were dealing with. I was terrified. Her sister called me and said, as her, sorry, as her father, but I didn't know if she was safe or not. I feared for her life.
When she came to your home, how was she? How was she doing?
First, she went back to Atlanta, to her townhouse, and she was sick. She was just a mess. She didn't want to change her clothes because she thought somebody might be spying on her. She didn't want to go into her house because she didn't know if somebody was there waiting for her. My wife met her in Atlanta, and reporters were climbing on her balcony trying to get access to her. They were asking neighbors, how do we get into her house? They were putting lenses up against her window, trying to get pictures of Erin. And Erin's just trying to hide. She's trying to grasp and grapple with what was going on. We got a security guard or a private detective to follow Erin Paula home to Florida. So we had them protected from Atlanta down to Tampa. And when she got to Tampa, she just went into her room and closed the doors and put blankets up over the windows. Even in her own home, she didn't feel safe. She wouldn't eat, she wouldn't bathe, she wouldn't talk. All she would do was cry. And it was just a lot.
So she was,
I'm sorry.
would you say this was a terrible humiliation she felt?
I don't know that this could have happened to a person this could have a worse effect on it. You couldn't choose another person for this to have happened to that would have been worse for. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling my words here. You know, Erin, growing up, was a tall, skinny girl, you know, always in the back row in the class pictures because she was so tall. Long, thin legs and long, thin arms. And she was very self-conscious about her appearance. When she got into middle school and the growth spurt took off, it was even more. She was even more self-conscious. High school, some of her friends and other people at the school would refer to her as Minute, and that referred to Minute Bowl, who was like the 7'4" basketball player who was all arms and legs, and there was no meat on his bones. So she was very self-conscious about the way she looked, and even though she loved to dance, loved to participate in dance, and like would be in competitions and rehearsals and recitals, you know, that required costume changes. And, you know, the dancers would just change in front of each other, but Erin wouldn't. Erin was very self-conscious, and she wouldn't change in front of other people. She would go to a private area and change alone, because she was very self-conscious about the way she looked. So I don't know that this could have happened. This was about the worst thing that could have happened to her from a perspective of self-pride, comfort about the way you looked. She was also someone who was very much in control of what she did, who she talked to, and this took all of that control away. She had no control. You know, her body was up on the internet for millions to see, and she couldn't control it. She had no choice, she had no word, she had no say in any of it. It just happened. And she was victimized and traumatized and horrified. So yeah, this was just horrible. I don't know that you could have done anything worse to this particular girl.
And so she must have feared for her own life.
Objection, lady.
Go ahead.
I know she feared for her own life. She told me on several occasions that she was afraid to go up the stairs, that she didn't know who this was, that she thought somebody was there going to kill her. We didn't know who it was at first. We thought this had to be an inside job, that this had to be an ESPN employee, because nobody would know where she was. Nobody should know what hotel she was in. The only people who could have known what hotel she was in were people on the ESPN crew. So we just thought this had to have been an inside job, and so that raised the fear and the anxiety level even more, because if you're working with people and you can't trust, or you're suspicious that they may have some sort of terrible, you know, they may be coming after you, you're never at ease. She was terrified. We were all terrified. I really, really was horrified and thought that somebody was trying to kill my daughter, and I know she did too. She told me that on several occasions.
She went back to work eventually, right?
She did go back to work, I think in August of 2009, yes. You want to talk a little bit about that? Or?
Sure.
Okay. quite a bit happened before that. We, just a few days after we had discovered the video, we flew out to Los Angeles and met with the FBI and a couple of attorneys that Perry, Erin's agent at the time, had recommended. And in the very first session, they showed up, they were wonderful, but they wanted to know what everybody was asking and what was all over the internet. Was this a publicity stunt? Was this just to bring more attention to Erin Andrews? Well, let me tell you something. Erin Andrews didn't need more attention, and she certainly didn't want attention like that. And so they asked her that, and she said, no, absolutely not. This was a crime. So we met with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office for several hours. They made her look at the video, which she didn't want to do, and she told them, if you make me do this, I'm going to throw up. And I looked at them and I said, she's not kidding. And they said, well, you have to. And she went and threw up. And then she came back and sat down, and they went through the video, frame by frame. It was horribly embarrassing for her. But they went through the video, frame by frame, and after several hours of examination and just analysis, we saw that there were some slacks that she had been ironing, and on the back of them there was some kind of a design, I think it was wings or something. And so Erin had a stylist at that time, and we called the stylist who dressed her basically for these games, and the stylist came over and immediately recognized, oh yeah, I dressed you in that on this date. So we checked the calendar, and it was Vanderbilt, and it was Marriott. So we knew that a good portion of that video was shot at the local Marriott. Now, we didn't know who, but as it got closer to football season, college football season, which she had done for years and just loved, she was approaching the time where she was going to have to go back on the air. She was anxiety-ridden about that. She was horrified about what she saw, what people were writing on the internet, that this was all your fault. Some people in the media.
Objection, Your Honor, here's that.
I'll sustain, rephrase your question.
Okay.
Sorry.
What do you understand Erin was concerned about in respect to things showing up on the internet?
I'm sorry, one more time.
What did you understand she was worried about in her mind in respect to the internet, these things that were coming on the internet?
The things that were coming out on the internet were that this was a publicity stunt, that this was something to just garner attention, to get more fame. She was a Kardashian, she was, a Paris Hilton. And it couldn't have been any further from the truth. She was a victim, she'd been victimized. So that's what was happening on the internet. That's what she was horrified by. We were all horrified by that. We kept trying to take it down. We would send letters to these different entities to ask them to take it off, and then they'd put it up frame by frame by frame, It just got worse and worse and worse. As she got closer to the season, ESPN told her that she had to go on the air.
Here's that.
Go ahead.
As she got closer to football season, ESPN told her, you have to go on the air and do an interview about this. She didn't want to. She did not want to do that. She wanted to put it aside and never have to deal with it again. But it was huge. It was overwhelmingly huge. So she had to figure out who she was going to do an interview with. They wanted her to do it with Good Morning America, which was on ABC, and that's a Disney. ESPN and ABC are owned by Disney. And Erin decided that she would do it with Oprah. I mean, she had invitations and requests to do interviews about the video and about what had happened from anybody you can imagine. Anderson Cooper, Meredith Vieira called our house, CBS Morning News called our house, everybody. Oprah had reached out, and we had a discussion with Oprah's producers about it. And Erin said, if I'm going to do an interview, it will be with Oprah, because Oprah is a victim of a crime. She'll get it. And we also figured, if you go on like a Good Morning America or something, they'll have a 2-minute, 3-minute segment. Well, that wasn't enough time to tell what was happening, and how bad it was and how it had injured her. So she went and did an interview with Oprah. During the interview, she broke out in this red rash on her neck as she was telling Oprah about what had happened. And they basically stopped the interview to bring out makeup to try to cover the rash because it was just so pronounced. We sat there, my wife and I, in the front row for support, and she did the interview. The interview aired. As she was getting ready to go and get ready for football, the night before her first game, we got a call from the FBI that they had arrested the guy who was responsible for shooting the video. And they told us about what had happened. They told us that he had called Marriott and said he wanted a room next to it. First he wanted to know if she was staying there, and they said yes. Then he wanted a room right next to her.
Hearsay.
This was all in the FBI report. And so I remember reading this and thinking to myself, how does this happen? How does this happen that somebody would call a hotel and ask if Erin Andrews is there, and they say yes? I was dumbfounded, just absolutely floored. And then they put him in a room next to her, and he's up against the door videotaping my daughter. She's undressed, she's getting ready for a football game. She didn't know if anybody was at the door or not. I thought to myself, if this guy had been a killer, she'd be dead. I couldn't believe it. All night long, I laid awake reading this report over and over and over, thinking, how does this happen? And then about 3 in the morning, I get a text from Erin that says, are you awake? I'm like, yeah. And she had been doing the same thing. She was just reading this over and over. How does this happen? How could they tell him that she was there and then put him in a room next to her without even notifying her? I still can't believe it to this day. I mean, it's just unfathomable. So, in answer to your question, and I apologize for taking so much time, but in answer to your question, she did go that very next game, that very next day, that morning, she went out and did a football game. And she called me. She told me she was sick. She wanted to throw up. She didn't know if she could do it. There was a horde of media there that all they wanted to do was, hit her with questions about what had happened and the arrest, and she just wanted to try to focus on what she had to do. She really didn't want to do it. She knew she had to do it. For Erin, work has been therapeutic in that she's been able to throw herself into stuff, but then there's the down times when she's not busy and she has the opportunity to reflect, or these demons, if you will, creep back in. So she went out and she did the game. I don't remember what game it was. All I remember is watching her, hoping she could keep it together, hoping she wouldn't fall apart. We had spoken just seconds before she went on the air, and she was in tears. But she pulled it off. She was able to do a solid hit when they threw it to her. know when she's on, I know when she wasn't on. She did what she was required to do, but I could tell that she wasn't there. You know, she was like, obviously had much more on her mind. So she did return, and that's basically what happened.
You stayed in touch with her ever since those times, all these years that she's been in her career?
Yes, we have a great relationship. You know, growing up in Tampa, you know, I was the investigative reporter in Tampa, and they'd always say to Erin, "Oh, you're Steve Andrews' daughter." And now, when people see me, they go, "Oh, you're Erin Andrews' dad." So it's kind of funny, but yeah, we stayed in touch. When she was working with the Lightning, she would come home, I would watch their games, I'd have a critique for her. I'd have a tape of the game, I'd have a critique next to the tape. She came home at 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes I was sitting there waiting for her just to go over it. So yeah, we kept in touch from the time she got into broadcasting till now. We stay very, very much in touch. We're very, very close.
Let's talk about how she is aside, put the work aside. How is she personally? Has she been changed by this?
Yeah. Erin, as I said, Erin used to enjoy being around crowds. She used to enjoy that football game. I mean, it took us 25 minutes to get across the field, you know, shaking hands, taking pictures with fans, autographs. Today it would take 30 seconds. She wouldn't stop. She would just run by because she's afraid. She's afraid of crowds. She's afraid of people. She doesn't trust anymore. She was so outgoing, so friendly, so engaging. Anybody could walk up to her and get a picture with her. She would talk to them about where they went to school. Now, she is so frightened of being approached. If somebody comes up behind her and taps her on the shoulder, she absolutely loses it because she's just terrified. She's a shell of the person she was before this happened. Before this happened, before we found out about this, she was just so much fun, always joking, always wanting to have a good time with her family. Now, it's all changed. She's afraid. My daughter has been scared for 8 years. 8 years. She has been terrified that there's something else out there, that there's somebody else looking for her, that something is going to come around the corner. She's not fun. I don't mean to, but she's not the fun person she was. She's mad. She's scared. She's terrified. She's depressed. She cries. She's full of anxiety. She's a very, very changed person. She's not the girl that we used to know.
That's all.
Morning, Mr. Andrews. How are you?
Good morning, sir.
This video taken by Mr. Barrett and uploaded to some internet site occurred around July, or you found out about it around July 2009, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if I heard you correctly, after you all found out about it in July 2009, your daughter, Miss Andrews, returned to her ESPN job for the initial start of the college football season in 2009, right?
Yes, sir.
And that was the first Thursday night game of the season, of the 2009 season. She was there back at her job.
You know, I honestly couldn't tell you if it was a Thursday night game or a weekend game. I don't remember.
But it was that opening weekend.
It was her first game of the season.
Okay. And her returning to her job with ESPN at the time required her to travel around the country, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it required her to stay in hotels, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, when she's working as a sideline reporter, it's fair to say that the sports business is primarily a male-dominated business, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that position that she's in, Miss Andrews has to be thick-skinned, correct?
Yes, sir.
And even before Mr. Barrett took this video and uploaded it to the internet, your daughter would sometimes be heckled or have rude things said to her when she was doing her job as a sideline reporter, correct?
Yes, she did, but now it's tenfold.
But not only has she been heckled and said things bad about her before this incident, after this incident, she's even had death threats against her, had she?
She did, yes.
And these death threats that she had against her was while she was participating on Dancing with the Stars, right?
That's when we found out about them, but they had occurred some time before. It wasn't too long after the video went up. Apparently, this guy who lived in Virginia contacted the Dan Patrick Show through emails and told, in the emails said that he was going to shoot her. He was going to pick her off from a mile away. She'd never see it coming. We found out about these death threats while she was participating in Dancing with the Stars, but honestly, I believe they occurred before that.
But that's when they became known, in 2010, while she's on Dancing with the Stars, correct?
While she was on Dancing with the Stars.
As a contestant.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And these death threats were serious enough that the FBI became involved, correct?
That's correct, sir. Yeah.
Now, jumping back, you've talked about earlier in your, Mr. Kennard was asking you some questions about the FBI. You learned that your daughter was also filmed at a hotel in Columbus, Ohio, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that filming in Columbus, Ohio occurred, and by Mr. Barrett, correct?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
And that occurred prior to the filming that occurred at the Nashville Marriott at Vanderbilt, correct?
That I couldn't tell you because I don't have those documents in front of me, and it's really been a while since I reviewed all that stuff.
Well, let's see if we can help you there.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I can approach you.
Thank you.
Look over, Mr. Andrews, you would look over to page 4. Well, first off, what I've handed you, do you see where this is the plea agreement for Defendant Michael David Barrett?
Yes, sir.
So flip over to page 5, if you would.
Page 5. Yes, sir.
And you see the first paragraph there? The first full paragraph.
First full paragraph, yes, it is, sir.
And in that first full paragraph, Mr. Barrett traveled to a Columbus hotel on February 4, 2008, correct?
That's what it says, yes, sir.
And then it also states that in February 5th, 2008, Mr. Barrett shot through the Columbus hotel room's peephole a video of victim Andrews naked in the room. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Without victim Andrews' knowledge.
Without, I'm sorry?
It says, and it's concluded by saying without her knowledge. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it here, but if you're saying it, I'm sure it is. Yes, I see it, without knowledge or consent.
And then Mr. Barrett also went, prior to coming to Nashville, he went to a hotel in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Isn't that correct?
That's what it says here, sir.
And that was in July 2008 that that Mr. Barrett goes to a Milwaukee, Wisconsin, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your daughter was staying in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at that time when he was there. Is that accurate?
She was staying in Milwaukee. My understanding of this is that he had made reservations at that particular place, but when Erin got there, he wasn't there.
But Mr. Barrett altered a peephole in the hotel room in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, correct?
Yes.
And that was July 2008, right?
July, yes, sir.
And as a result of Mr. Barrett's actions, he was criminally charged, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he was sentenced to federal prison, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, this time I'd like to introduce the plea agreement, the next exhibit.
That's a problem, Your Honor, that whole thing, we've got limitations on what can come in and that. The courts will make some rulings on that.
Well, as to this certificate, I've actually wrote on some of it, not been admissible, we'll look at it later.
Yeah, Your Honor, I thought it was stipulated, but I might be
That's what
wrong.
it's stipulated to.
It's on their list too, so.
Just certain parts, Your Honor.
Well, it'd be number 17 for identification, only will cover the covered later.
That's all, thank you. No.
That's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
What time did you say your witness was going to be available for this afternoon?
I would suggest, Your Honor, we break till 1:15.
1:15, okay. We'll see you at 1:15. By the way, again, don't discuss the case amongst yourselves.